Welcome, everybody. I'm Amy Rogers with the SEA program, and we are delighted to have Becky Ferrell with us today with a wealth of information in the dance area. And she works at Dance USA, but has also a lot of other background. And I'm going to let her go ahead and share with us. So welcome, Becky. We're so happy to have you with us today.
Thanks so much for having me here, Amy. I'm so excited. As you said, I am the director of programs at Dance USA. I am also an adjunct associate professor at Shenandoah Conservatory. So I teach in both the dance division there for the undergrads and also the graduate students in our PALM program, which is the Performing Arts Leadership Management master's program there. And getting my PhD right now. So University of Kentucky, it's actually the first cohort of doctoral students in the country for a PhD in arts administration. So I'm the only dancer, so representing the dance field strong in that, and also a choreographer and dancer myself. So wear lots of hats in the field right now, which I really love.
That is awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I am just so amazed at the wealth of programs that are starting to develop around the arts
Yes.
management area. Glad to see they have a dancer being.
Me too.
How big is that cohort?
Only 6, one of 6. And so I'm the only dancer and only one of 2 with a performing arts background, like as a practitioner.
Sure.
The other one is a musician. So really important to make sure that there are practitioners that have leadership positions in arts administration. I really find that you know the field in a really intimate way. And I think that information and that research from inside the field is really helpful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. How did you get interested in dance? Have you always are you the one that when you were 2 were twirling around, or is it something that developed?
Yes and no. I mean, I really started with cheerleading. Like, I loved cheerleading. My dad was a big sports person. I still have no idea anything about sports. But I loved to go to games with him and decided that being a cheerleader would be really wonderful. So I did that for a really long time up until middle school. And then I realized the thing I really loved about cheerleading was all the dancing, like when we do halftime shows. So then my parents said, well, let's try some gymnastics. I was really flexible. I like to tumble. Did that for a few years. Actually trained with Bella Caroli out on his ranch. I was supposed to be an Olympic gymnast, which is just a fun little fact. But after I came back from the ranch, I quit because I did not want to do that for that long of time. And again, one of those things I really loved about gymnastics was the dance portion. So beam and floor were my events because of the dancing. So finally, when I was 16, my parents were like, well, what kind of magnet high school do you want to go to? I'm from Richmond, Virginia. We're very lucky to have multiple magnet high schools in Virginia. And there was one for the Center for the Arts. And I decided to audition. I had never taken a formal dance class before in my life, but got in. So really thankful for my gymnastics and cheerleading training. And the rest is history. I've been in a studio pretty much every day of my life since I was 16. So yeah.
That is a fascinating background, especially with the gymnastics. And there are
Yes.
some, who grew up watching that and everything. So I'm sure you have some wonderful stories about.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I got to meet so many cool people at the Caroli Ranch, like Dominique Dawes, Mary Lou Retton. Like, I used to have a whole wall of their autographs. Very, very cool. Really surreal kind of growing up like that.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Yeah.
When you were in high school, what was your what was your dream? Like, what did you envision yourself becoming?
I just knew that I wanted to have a career in the arts that people took seriously. So it's so ironic that that is really like the centering of my jobs when I put them all together, is making sure that people really understood that this could be a sustainable career and that dance wasn't just something that should be othered or it should just be extracurricular. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I love my non-major students that just take this in addition to being, a business major or something like that. But I really wanted those people, those students and audience members and donors to understand that this is a career that is sustainable and that should be taken serious and should be valued.
Yeah, I just had this conversation with my husband. We have it a lot, but just especially with pandemic related a little bit, because we were just talking about how some of the unemployment and ending in some states had ended it, and my husband's self-employed within the film video production and things like that in the arts area, and so we understand the we understand the struggles and the issues going on. We're not saying
Yep.
we don't understand that there's areas that can't get people hired, and that.
Correct.
But I think what always comes up is, for those that are pursuing the arts, a lot of times somebody is like, well, go get a real job. That's just a
Yeah.
hobby thing, and that just breaks my heart.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is a career that, and then when you look at how people turn to the arts and what they
Yep.
turn to for, and then you're like, okay, well, did you listen to music on your way into work? Did you do
Yep.
this? Did you do that?
That. Yep.
That's a part of who your life
Absolutely.
too. And think about your life without artists in it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what, that's something that a lot of my colleagues, anytime we have donors or when I'm doing recruitment, they say, oh, bring Becky in, because I always start with, what's your favorite color? How did you pick your car? What did you listen to this morning? And we go through a whole thing. They're like, wow, this is so cool. And then I talk about aesthetics, like, look how great your aesthetic is. And guess what? This was brought to you from artists. So think about how many times you've been to the doctor in the past month or saw your lawyer in the past month. Think about how much more you were, interacting with the arts than you are with these professions that feel highly valued, to find them highly acclaimed or find that they should have really high salaries. I don't think it's either or. I think it's an and. So that's where I want people to see that. So if they are integrating with the arts all the time, then they should be paying for it as well, and thinking about how valued it is, how they're valuing it. And yeah, during this pandemic, what would we have done without the arts?
Yeah.
What would we have done? So it's really hard to see the sector almost become bankrupt when really it's the thing that's uplifting our entire country right now. So that's something that I'm really working hard on with my advocacy work. I'm on the board for Virginians for the Arts. We're the advocacy board for the state of Virginia. So spent about 2 weeks talking to all of my congressmen and women, just urging them to continue arts funding, arts education funding, and really making sure that the NEA is fully funded next year, so we can see how those funds can be dispersed into national, state organizations, and then further down to local.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're fortunate. We have an Illinois Arts Council grant to do
Yep.
some of what we do. And
Great.
I mean, it's the idea that I think I said this before we started recording, is
Mm-hmm.
the reason we're recording this is now the more people that we can reach
Yes.
with this information. And it's so important to get it out there and just make it available, and help more artists succeed. I step back, and when I talk to people about the mission of C, and I always say, think about a world with more people being able to support themselves doing what they love to do. We're not talking
Absolutely.
having all these millionaire artists. All we're
No.
looking at is supporting themselves doing what they love to do. Then you have
Yep.
a happier society, because not only are the
Absolutely.
creatives happier, but then also the people that are enjoying the art, because there's
Absolutely.
behind.
Yep.
So
And the art will be richer. The art will be
yes.
richer when artists aren't constantly having to worry about the financial aspects of their career.
Right.
I think that that's the most detrimental thing, and especially in dance, because sometimes that means that you're dancing on flooring that's not appropriate for you, if it's not a sprung floor, or you're pushing your body to the max in a certain way. We really have to think about mental health during this time.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we taking care of artists? So it goes beyond what hourly wages should be or what kind of grants they should be getting, but it's making sure that we are really protecting artists in a way that's holistic, that we're not just thinking about the wage part of it, but how are we really, really stepping up and respecting the form in a more holistic way.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. When you kind of continuing on the academic path of it,
Yeah.
when you were in college, what did you major in, and when did you know that? Did it change and adapt through college? As you went through that?
Yeah, so I got my undergraduate degree from Virginia Commonwealth University. So I have a BFA in dance and choreography. Really love that. My strong suit was choreography. I love creative process. I just really love to be a maker. I love to make sure that I was partnering with lots of fun dancers and making great work. And I really love to connect with the guest artists that came in and kind of pick their brain. I've always been a very curious person. So anytime we had a guest artist, I would raise my hand and be, our class president that, walked them around or introduced them, or any of our student councils. I always made sure I was leadership there. and really wanted to know, how are they making it in the field? Like, what did it look like? How did they kind of put these different aspects of the field together to really build a career? So when I left VCU, at the performing arts high school I went to, I ended up being the chair of the dance division there at 21 years old.
Wow.
Yes, that is very overwhelming for a 21-year-old. I just want to say that because a lot of the students are very close to my age at that point. I coming from a program that is really heavily about technique and creative process and not so much about pedagogy. For me, I find that I was not set up for success in that way. I was still dancing full time for a company that was touring regionally as well. So once that work kind of picked up more, I decided to step away from the full-time position after a year and go to part-time. And that was really the best thing for me. I learned that I make my own schedule. And that from that moment at like 22, 23 at that point, I knew that I wanted to be in control of what meetings I went to, when I took vacation time, what I said yes to, what I said no to. So that's really how that kind of started that pathway of doing not just one job, but multiple jobs. I always call it the patchwork life. I really love that part of it. So did that for a long time, and then kind of got tapped to go to graduate school. There were some bigger jobs at universities that I was not even allowed to like apply for or be a guest artist for because I didn't have a master's. And I was just kind of heartbroken, you know? It's like, oh, this is not so great. So went to Arizona State to get my master's degree out in Phoenix. Loved it. Met some amazing people that I still have great relationships with now. And after the master's is when I started teaching in higher ed right away. So 2008. So I've been dance professor since then, which feels like a really long time talking about 2021 right now. Yeah, but I've always done it as like adjunct work, part-time. Trying to have a full-time academic position felt no different than doing the full-time at 21, to be honest. It felt very rigid to me. Like, you have to be at this committee meeting and then this faculty meeting. You have to teach this certain way and this kind of syllabus. And it didn't fit with me. I like to craft things on my own. I'm a bit of an infiltrator in that way. I like to come in and say, yeah, this does not work. How can we switch this up? And looking at, academia, so many people are tenured, which I think is great. Like, that stability is awesome. But it can make things a little stale in departments. So I think making sure you have new energy coming in there and saying, hey, so you've done this for 10 years. This has worked really great for you. What are we doing to push the field forward now? Like, how are we changing how we're thinking? Like, we can't try to recruit the same students we wanted 20 years ago. The field's not the same. The field wasn't the same 5 years ago. And the field definitely isn't the same a year ago. So just always trying to shake things up and really kind of making my way in my own space, and forging my own path has kind of always been how I've done things.
That's awesome. Well, and I really think one of the things you mentioned that I think is really important, that kind of goes into even what's happened this last year with it, is
Yeah.
that we've all been forced not by our choice necessarily to have
Yes.
to make those changes and everything. So, but that also taught us that, like, I look back, we should have been doing some of the things we were
Oh yeah.
forced to do much earlier, right?
Oh
So,
yeah.
so it's
Absolutely.
good. But I also wanted to kind of go back. You said, okay,
Yeah.
so I took this job right after college, right? And you realized that wasn't the
Yeah.
quite right fit for you.
Yeah.
So I work with college kids. I have a couple different hats as well, even on our own campus and off campus. And so
Yeah.
talking with college students that just graduated last year and this year, because they're still out there searching, and I often get this, the question of, oh, Amy, should I take this job? I just had a call this last week. Amy, I don't know that
Yeah.
this is quite what I was looking for, but should I take this and this and that? And I always say to them, I said, you're talking to somebody who is, my husband's had like, I don't know, we quit counting how many different careers and things
Right.
he's taken, and all around
Absolutely.
different things and paths and stuff like that. I said, you need to go with what, and talk through a lot of the things about what approach you're going to take. But I said, the thing that you need to remember is, in this life, if we are fortunate and lucky enough, we are going to work for many, many years, most
Yep.
likely into our 70s.
Yep.
And so what you choose to do right now isn't the end all be all. It may influence some different things in different ways, but it doesn't have to change what your end goal is if it doesn't
Yep.
work out to be what you really wanted it to
Absolutely.
be. And I think that's so important. I think it feels so overwhelming to take
Yep.
that first step into work world.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's hard. I think you just have to breathe it out. That's kind of like what I do. I'm like, okay, so if I do this thing and it doesn't work, I don't feel like I have to stay with it. I've always been like that though. I think I'm very thankful that my parents, if I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, even, literally came off the plane from the Caroli Ranch and was like, I want to quit gymnastics. My parents were like, okay, do you want to do something else? And like, there wasn't a big, you have to do this. You've already put all this work in. None of that. It's, a lot of agency. I grew up with a lot of agency, which I appreciated. And I think the thing that is so saddening about the field is that a lot of artists don't feel like they have that agency, especially when they're younger. So making sure they feel super empowered to say, okay, I'm going to try this out. If it doesn't work, then I move on to something else. If something better comes along, then I do that instead. Like really being able to do that, and and reading your contract. I'm gonna add that as a side note. So if your contract says you have to do this for that amount of time, you probably do. But knowing like when it comes time for renewals or things like that, now really think through what's going to work for you. And I think about my career in like as a pie chart, what percentage. So right now I feel like I'm really 75% arts admin. I'm going to say 25%, student, and the other 25 is, educator right now, which means the choreographic part has been taken out because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So when we start going into next year, then I need to think like, okay, maybe I need to push back some of my arts admin to reposition the choreographic nature when it used to be 50% choreography, 50%, it just keeps shifting, but it doesn't change who I am in the field. You know what I mean? Right. So that I always think about those different ways, like how am I working these different areas of the field and making space for new opportunities and for myself to evolve. I think that that's what, you want these young artists to know. Who you are right now is not going to be the person you are later. It's going to be another awesome version of yourself. So don't get get so overwhelmed, like right at 21 and 22. The world is so overwhelming at that time anyway. Don't add more stress to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you may take on things that you find new things you never even thought about.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
For you, I want to kind of ask about that. So here you are, you're 21 and you're trying these new things, and you talk about all the different hats that you've worn in your career. What are some of those different hats? You talked about a little of them, but even ones that surprised yourself, like you found yourself in these positions with these opportunities.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That, and I'll let you finish it in a second, but I was just talking about to an actor who does his own stunts. He does, directing in front of the camera as well, and acting. And he said, all of it makes me better. I'm a better whatever, director, better actor, better stuntman, because I know all these different aspects to it. So I just wanted to kind of throw that in.
Absolutely.
I think that's so important. So
absolutely, 100%. When I was dancing for Z Melon's dance company, which is now Radar Dance, I was a soloist for them. So we were on a regional tour and I became injured. It was just an overuse injury in my psoas. So I actually had a micro tear in my psoas. Very, very painful injury, really hard to recover from because of how deep the psoas is. And I realized I got some cortisone shots to get through the tour, typical, like I was young enough, I would never do that now, but early 20s, I could kind of rehab it to finish the tour. Came back, realized I had to be off of my leg for like 6 months. So could still teach on the left side, not really ideal, but how am I going to make my way with this company that I have a full-time contract with? And the director, who was my first dance teacher, so knows me very well, said, can you write grants? And I'm like, I have no idea if I can write a grant. She's like, okay, well, let's practice. So she kind of talked me through it, ended up loving it. I have always been a writer, but more of a creative writer. So now kind of switching it to almost a more scientific way is how I think about grant. It's not flowery. It's like, here's what we need. Here's the money. Here's the mission. So learning like what that kind of jargon looked like was very exciting for me. So that was how I got into arts administration, was because of an injury. So I wrote that grant. I mean, this was probably like 23, 24 at this point. VCU, where I got my undergrad, had a master's certificate in nonprofit management, and they let me have a concentration in arts administration advocacy. So I got to do all these cool internships, did all this really great work. It was 4 semesters. So summer, fall, spring, summer, got that certificate, loved it. was like, man, I can't believe that I can do this work and it can help supplement this part of the field. And I'm still getting back. So that was how arts admin was the lead in for me, was really thinking about arts administration. And then that, yeah, I mean, I've been doing that now for over a decade. Really excited about the writing portion and the funding portion of the arts. I really think it's important that artists are always paid. No one should ever do anything for free. Like you cannot do that. Even if it's a great opportunity, you have to say no. Like that's what I tell people. Like you have to, for the better of the field, you have to say no. Because if you say yes, that means they're going to think that's okay. So the fundraising part was really exciting to me. So that development part of the field, and that really led me into programming. Like knowing that I had a really a keen curatorial eye, just the way I was putting things together in grants. Someone was like, "Have you ever thought about performance curation?" So it made me kind of sit down, look at a bunch of art, see how I would put it into a concert. Those kind of skills, and then again, lots of mentoring. But yeah, that's how I kind of got into the role that I was in now. But yep, psoas injury into grant writing was how the circular path there.
Well, and that's something you wouldn't, that's what I think is so important to hear is you do not know. You don't
At
know
all.
what could lead. I mean, there's many right now that, I mean, I think we're all safe to say none of us saw COVID coming. And what has that forced? You don't see injuries coming like that. I mean, you may, but you don't know then what it leads to. And
oh, no, not at all. Not at all.
yeah. So with your, like, I think about the position right out of college and then with the grant
Yeah.
writing, a lot of times the statement will come up about the imposter syndrome, and like, am I qualified to do this? Should
Gosh.
I do this? You seem to be a very outgoing and confident person. Do you ever struggle with that or have
All the time.
Okay, good.
All the time. Oh my gosh, I get terrified all the time. All the time. I give myself like big pep talks. Even before today, I was like, I like do my hair from like I have like little rituals. You had to tell yourself you're a rock star, this stuff, you're an expert in your field. Like these are the things I just constantly repeat to myself. Academia was really tough for me because I was young, like a young professor coming in. And a bit wild, right? Like piercings, tattooed, like hot pink mohawk, kind of like busting through the doors, being like, you need to change everything. Why aren't you teaching these students about entrepreneurial skills? So I was, very nervous coming in to the academic realm and had to find just some really good allies very quickly. Like I cannot press upon people enough how important mentorships are. And when I think about mentorships, I have a mentor that's 10 plus years older than me and 10 minus years younger than me. I think that they're on both ends of the spectrum. So, and I do think about those younger as my mentors, not mentees. I learned so much from them. So that was the thing that really kept me going, kept me grounded. But I get nervous all of the time. And really, yeah, I just do a lot of practicing, a lot of talking into the mirror, a lot of prep work. I never just wing anything. Just really have to try to come prepared. That's what like eases me and settles me when I do things. But yeah, always nervous. Every job application I've ever turned in, I'm like, can I like writing the cover letter? I'm like, is this really what I do? Is this what I do?
I think that is so good for everybody to hear because I think we look at those things and I'm in my upper 40s now and the same thing. It is more common, it is more normal than it is to not have that. I think
absolutely.
Again, I just talking with students this last week said to them, I said, that's normal. I'd be more concerned if you weren't a little concerned about that.
Oh yeah. I'm all the time. I'm so thankful for my husband who is also a dancer, and there's so many times I'm like, can I do this? And he's like, you've already done it. So yes, just keep going.
Yeah.
So having that support system and, and having people that are honest that are like, no, you haven't done this yet, but why can't you learn? Come on. Right. Like this is, I have also never applied for a job that I didn't have a skill set that was required and just was like, I probably can do this. And went for it. I mean, to be honest, that's how I met my husband. You say yes to dance jobs where you can be like, oh, can you teach modern, ballet, tap, jazz? I'm like, I can teach all of these, but tap, but it's beginner level. I can kind of fake it. And my husband's a tap dancer, so I needed like a private lesson. That's how we met. I was like, who's the best tap dancer in this town? And that's how we met. And the rest is history on that one. So I got the job and the husband at the same time. Still cannot tap. I will say that part, but I'll leave that up to him. But yeah, but I think just going for it. If you meet all these requirements, except for like one or two, do it. What's the worst that could happen? You know, they say no, but you'll never know if you don't try. So I'm a big fan of just going for it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love it. Well, and when we were doing the C Summit and we had some HR professionals on there, right? You know,
Yeah,
and they're all like, you know, that's our wish list, right? Like, you know, that's the wish list. And the likelihood
yeah,
that they're going to have somebody that hits all the wish list items and is a good fit with the company, because that's the
right.
whole other piece to it that I think we often forget about is
Oh yeah,
a two-way street, and you want to fit with them and they want to, you know,
yep,
it needs to, you all need to feel comfortable together. And so I was like, yes, so that's okay. I also loved what you said about mentors, and you know,
yeah.
working at college students, especially in this last kind of year or two with all the social unrest and everything, I have
Hmm.
said my college students make me a better person. I
Yep.
see things, I see things from different perspectives, and as I get older, I am more than happily to admit I don't get TikTok really well. And I know
Yeah.
if I'm going to market to college students that I need
Yeah.
to have a better understanding. Facebook is great. That's where all my, you know, 40-year-old female friends are at, right?
Yeah.
Not where my C audience is at. Maybe the,
Totally.
you know,
Maybe.
so
Yeah.
so again, so I get to work with college students as interns with it, and I always try to make sure that they understand that it's an opportunity, but I'm in need. Their expertise they're bringing is a great
Absolutely.
value to me and to our organization to be able to do that. So I
Yeah.
love that, and I love looking at that, because I think that's for all of us. If you're the 20-year-old right now, remember that when you're 42, that you know
Oh
that
yeah.
value that you're bringing to the table is important, and don't sell
Oh
yourself
yeah.
short to it. So
Yeah. And I mean, I got so many amazing opportunities young because other people were like, yeah, let's give this young
yep.
girl a chance. So that's always been so important to me when I'm building out my team. So when I got to kind of build out my programming team at Dance USA, I was like, I knew the person, Shanice Mason. I had her in mind. She's just a rock star, probably like 15 years younger than me. I'm like, she needs to be the programs manager. Like, don't do a search. Like,
Yeah.
this is the person that can do the work. And yeah, thankfully it worked out definitely. So yeah, I can't even imagine doing the work that I do without Shanice, and making sure that, you know, I'm up to date on all the things, and you know, vice versa. I just think that that's really, really important. And then, like I said, I have a ton of younger mentors that I lean on all the time, especially when it comes to things like social media, things about rebranding, like the underground dance scene, like maybe some stuff that I'm not hearing about, just because at the level I am for dance curation, I'm hearing about the bigger stuff, right?
Right.
We call them the bigs, like the big dance companies, multi-million-dollar dance companies. But I'm so much more interested in who's making work in like rural Wisconsin, like what's going on there. You know what I mean? Like I want to know about all these different pockets of dance in the country. It's not just in New York and Chicago and LA.
Right.
Like there's so many more amazing dance communities. So it's been really great to just kind of reach out and have like a network of younger artists all over the United States right now.
Yeah. What are some of your tips to help people find mentors, regardless of where they're at? Maybe
Yeah.
somebody listening and you want to get a connect with somebody who's younger who can give you a fresh look, or you're the younger person. What are your top tips for really finding a good mentor fit?
I always, well, for me, I like to read things, right? So, is there an article that you read that you like? How were you introduced to them? Was it through an article? Did you see a webinar with them on it? You know, or was it something on Instagram or things like that? For me, like, what's the introduction to them? And then you have to, I call it the recon. Like, I wish I was a CIA agent. That's like my big dream. So maybe in my other lifetime, but like you have to do recon. So you need to find out about them, like where are they located? What do they do? What's other work that they've done? Other things they have written, making sure you're really in the know about that person. And then I would contact them. I think the thing that's so amazing about, we call it a COVID blessing at Dance USA, like during this time, is that people have been more open to setting up like one-on-one meetings. Maybe it's over Zoom. Maybe it's just, you know, a quick 15-minute introductory phone call. Maybe they can recommend something for you if they're not able to meet with you. But they're more accessible. And I just think that's really amazing. I think starting with that connection, I would never recommend be like, oh, I just kind of like this person, let me email them. Whenever I email someone, it's always with, and I read this article that you wrote in this, or I saw this show and you were so wonderful in this section. You know, I make sure that they know that I've invested in them before I ever ask someone to do something for me. So making sure there's a deep investment there before. And some mentorships just come around naturally. Like Cynthia Oliver is my mentor, you know, amazing associate chancellor and dance professor at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. We just got to know each other when I was in their dance department and just kept, you know, building and building and building. And now I can just text her and be like, I have no idea what I'm doing for this coursework, you know? and you know, 20-year-old Becky would never think that her phone number would be in her phone, you know what I mean? Would have this sort of relationship. So I think that they take some time to build, but don't be scared off by a big name. If you're really, you know, if you're moved by someone or want to get to know them, I think, you know, do the recon and then do the reach out.
Yeah, that recon is such a good tip, because I think
Woo!
it takes work, but again, if you're looking for them to give you time, then show the,
Yep.
you know, so that's a great tip. I really like that. And don't be afraid to ask. That's always the thing. The worst is you will have spent time on that recon, which you're going to
Yep.
gain from anyways, right?
Exactly.
Learning more about what they're doing. And the little bit of time it takes you to reach out to them. So I think that's really good. I want to ask you kind of about the challenges and successes just in your career. What has been the biggest challenge for you in term, like maybe when something didn't go the way you envisioned it, and it just, I don't like using the word failure. I know, just because I think we all can learn from it, and it sometimes does become our greatest achievements is how we come out of that. So what's a big challenge, and how'd you kind of work through it?
Yeah, I think boundaries, to be honest, have been really challenging for me, especially in academia. There's some strange hierarchies that are there, you know, like you can't email the chair, you have to email the assistant to the chair, you know, like, and then, you know, there's like a little hand slap if you email the wrong person or you don't copy the right person. And it's like, there's so many rules. And that to me was really hard because, you know, you want to do the right thing, you want to show up the right way. And it sometimes some of those constrictions, I think, can really limit some younger artists that are coming into the field that are artists plus educators. So that was something that was tricky for me to learn, like what protocols were, I guess. Like I didn't know you can't just walk into the dean's office and just say hi. You know, like that to me feels very casual in an artistic setting. Like you would be able to say hi to the artistic director, like, you know, you can say hi to donors, and then there was something very different about academia and the higher ed. Yeah, the hierarchy was very strange to me, and who you call a doctor and who you don't, because in the dance field, no matter what the degree is, typically we call them by their first names. Like I don't make my students call me Professor Farrell; they call me Becky. You know, I joke that when I get my PhD, I do want to be Dr. Dance for the first year, but then they can just call me Becky. Like, you know, funny things like that. Like it's not a big deal to us. So that to me was so different, even though we're talking about, you know, School of Arts in higher ed, there's still like these strange things. So that to me was really hard. I've always had a really tough time. And now working in so much advocacy work, I feel like I'm like, okay, is it Representative Wexton or is it Congressman Wexton? Like, I want to make sure I don't mess this up because I'm asking for millions of dollars for the NEA on behalf of the state of Virginia. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So I will say, so it was sort of a bummer, like the way having to learn those hierarchies and those protocols and some wrist slapping and, you know, that kind of thing. But it made me more aware and more conscious of those, the way that the world works, I guess, in a different way. So it's a yes and. So it was hard, and I learned these lessons from it. And, you know, in the arts, you get a lot of no's. You know, for every yes you get, there's probably like 100+ no's that are behind it. And that's really taxing in our career. And it doesn't hurt any less. You know, and I wish I could say, like, you get used to it. Every single no I still get. I always joke that I cry it out and then I keep working. Like I allow myself the time to be upset, because you put a lot of work into it. Think about a grant. Oh my gosh, the work you put into a grant or a proposal, it's so much time and effort, and not just from yourself, but other people that are co-applying with you, and and people that review it before it even you submit. So those things are, like I always say, little deaths in a way, a little petite mort. It's really hard. Those loses are hard, but you have to keep going. And I think that just making sure you have that tenacity and that drive to know that a yes is coming. So
yeah.
It's tricky.
It is. It is. I can identify on the academia side, and even
Yeah.
just there are those nuances there, and that are different. But and then on the grants, I think about, if you are passionate about what you do, as a creative, it's part of who you are, and whether
Yeah.
it's on behalf of an arts organization or as an individual.
Yeah.
And those no's are hard to take because it's a part of your passion. That's the no.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and as somebody who's put together many grants, some with yeses and many, that have not yet
Hard.
come through, right? Or we just keep plugging away, and we don't do a ton. We're fortunate to have a really good funder for the most part, not everything, but for
Yeah.
the most part, and at least to get us to where we're at today. And so that's thankful, but it's hard to do that, and I think being able to remember that that's part of it.
Yep.
But go ahead and like you said, cry it out. Go ahead.
Woo! Yep.
You can feel disappointed. That's okay.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. And that's why something that I do, like I just was a guest curator at Dance Place, and we just did a review process, and we actually tell people if they did not, receive, a spot in this program, we do 30-minute chats with them after to give feedback. I mean, it needs to be driven by the artist. Like it can't be on the reviewer. So if the artist has a particular question, we're able to give them that feedback, because I feel like that's what the hardest part about really large calls, either for funding or for programming, is that you have 200 people. So you really can't ask the reviewer to give individual feedback to, 180 of them. But those moments that you can, I always make it a point to give the feedback, always, 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 because it's so important to the growth of that artist. And it's really great to see artists that got the no, got the no, got the no, and then got the yes, and then that yes leads to the next yes, and that we always joke, the hardest grant to win is your first one, because someone has to say that you're worthy of funding, of federal funding, of government funding, of national, state funding, and then once they see that, then you get it. And awards are no different. Once you get one, then you get the, we always joke, you just got to get the first one. Yeah. You just got to get the first one. So just making sure that you're working towards that and asking for the feedback, I think is so important in the process.
Why we're on that, I know this isn't kind of the focus of it, but
yeah,
one of the best tips always, and with a lot of the government grants, I don't know if it's true for all of them, but at least for our Illinois Arts Council, we can listen into the review process, which is so beneficial. And because I'm not a professional grant writer by any means or form, and for that one I do, because we are housed at a college. So there is somebody that I work with. The other grant, we don't. It's one that we've done through the C program ourselves since really pretty much since the beginning with that, because we have a really close relationship with that foundation. But the one thing that I always say to somebody, and again, this is just from our experience and then listening to various panels over the years, is really answer the questions that are being
100%.
Asked. It's really, I don't want to say it's as simple as that, but in a lot of regards, and if you can't answer the questions directly, then maybe it's not the right grant. Maybe the grant isn't the right match.
100%.
Like don't force yourselves into it, because
because I think the best, the thing that helped me write really successful grants is being a grant reviewer. So I started doing that at Arizona State University when I was getting my MFA. And then because I had that experience, I was able to do them on the national level, international level, and now local level. So last year I sat on the DC Commission on the Arts panels for their Gen Op, just did it for Montgomery County, for Maryland, like a month ago, did it for Illinois. So I've done it all over Mid-Atlantic region for the arts. I've also done that, sat on that grant panel. And that's the number one thing, what is the criteria? Because when we look at it, we literally have our criteria score sheet that has the exact questions you were given, and then your application is right next to it. So I literally cross-check first. That's the first thing I do as a reviewer. Did you do X, Y, and Z? Okay, great. Then I read it. I really am skimming to make sure that you're hitting the things that we're asking for. And if there's something that you're not able to do, you have to really be able to explain why and how you are going to accomplish it if you haven't done it before, and how you have capacity for those things. And yeah, and if a grant doesn't fit, don't do it. The time and effort it takes to do it is so extraneous. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. And I think this goes back to, you just have to be yourself always. Be your authentic self always, because you don't want to make a piece of work or write a certain way or go for a certain job that isn't the right fit, and you're having to change yourself. I would rather lose a million grants and still be myself at the end of it than having to package myself in a way that is not authentic.
Right. Well, and we've looked at sometimes when we're looking at them and we're like, well, we could do this, but do we have the capacity to do what we do now and continue to do that well and take that on? And the answer was no. So are you willing to give up what you do well to chase the money over here?
Correct.
And I guess if you're losing the money over here, maybe that the answer is yes. But if you're not, then why? So those. I mean, that's just, again, and I know that's a little, not completely off topic, but a little bit, because I think a lot of people will be going, if they haven't already had experience with that in some way or form, will be involved in grants.
Absolutely, 100%. I would say it's one of the hardest parts about the art sector here in the States, because if you go to other countries, especially across the pond, it is all the arts funding is so highly subsidized by the government. Like, you don't have to jump through so many hoops like we do here to get like $5,000. It's just really, it's so crazy to have a grant application that's 10 pages long for under $10,000. Like, for me, it should be a 1-pager. That's something that I, really want to change, and why I'm working so hard with Virginians for the Arts to say, when there is emergency funding that needs to be released to artists, you cannot make them write a narrative. Right. It is click boxes. These people are in dire need, completely bankrupt, on the verge of homelessness. They cannot write a narrative for you. So that's something that I'm really working hard with, is equity in grant, like how they're being processed. And getting rid of work samples, if that makes it high. What about a young artist that never has one? That means they're out of the running from the start. It's not fair. Right. So trying to change things like that. So I hope all the young artists know that there are people inside the systems that are working very hard to change them.
I love to hear that, because it is. There's just the knowledge base. I mean, it's not a surprise that those who do well getting grants continue to get grants, because they've got it down. They've got their system. They know they've got those resources. Not to say that we don't want continued funding there, but for those that don't have the resources to know how to put the grants together, don't have access to the, to that, it can feel
really hard.
It can feel overwhelming for that, for sure, with that. I'm going to look at the time here. We've got just a little bit, and I really wanted to maybe just touch on one or two more things here. That I kind of had written down there and that is, for those who are wanting to pursue a career in the dance field, in this area, all the areas of it, in sense, what's your biggest tip in general? Let's take away, not that we can take away COVID, because it will form how things move forward, but let's not take away, let's not specifically talk about today right now, but just what overall would be some of your big tips, and then we'll talk about things to do right now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I always press upon, my seniors, so I teach senior seminar, and I teach a whole trajectory of entrepreneurial classes at Shenandoah. I did it at American University. I did it at Illinois as well. That's my really my specialty. My bread and butter in academia is career preparedness for dancers. And, you really, first, you got to know where you want to be. You can't have these big dreams without knowing what city you want to be in. And it can't be enough for you to be like, I think I want to be in Austin. It's like, well, have you been to Austin? Who do you know in Austin? What's your favorite dance company in Austin? This is where the recon really comes into play, because we can talk all day about bios and CVs and websites, but where is your home? Where do you want to be? Where do you see yourself is the most important part of that. And you can't really do it senior year, right? You need to be doing it junior year because you need to be taking that summer and go to a summer intensive there, kind of look and see how the area is. I did that. I really thought I wanted to be in Minneapolis. I went there, hated it, too cold. And I was like, oh, good. I'm so glad I knew this my junior year. So I wasn't thinking that was my big plan senior year, and then it to blow up in my face in that way, you know? So for me, it really is the location. Like, where do you want to be? And where do you see yourself in what aspect of the field? Are you really wanting to go into dance education? Are you really wanting to, you know, just go right out and start auditioning for a bunch of companies? Again, that will help dictate where you're looking at location wise, and doesn't always have to be in the States. Like some of the students I teach at George Mason, I come into their senior seminar class every semester, and a lot of them are trying to go abroad. So my question back to them is always like, well, have you been to London? Like, have you been there in the winter? You know, like things like that. Like I think about weather because that's how it really changes me. Like I moved from Illinois back to the East Coast because I could not stand the snow that was there, you know, so that really does affect you and affects your career. So making sure you know where you want to be, I think, is vital, and know that you can move around later, but like what's that location right now, and how are you really, again, investing in that place before you ask for something from it is really important.
I can't tell you how much I like hearing that, just because I think that's something that I don't hear often people talk about, is the
Mhm.
location. And I still laugh. I married my husband, and I met in high school and went to college together. And so
Yeah.
it was a year ahead. I graduated in 3 years from college. I just wanted to get married
Wow.
and go move out to my little town I mentioned, right? Out in the
Yeah.
cornfields. And but I loved market research. I was a marketing major. I
Wow.
loved market research. And my advisor, who ended up starting the C program, and I ended up coming to work from that. So all connections. So it all worked out
Very
great.
cool.
But at the time, he's like, Amy, he's like, so you're going to do market research. I won't in this town. Is there market research jobs there? And I'm like, and he
Yeah.
still jokes about this today, the conversation that we had.
Yes.
And my husband was starting his own business, so I was helping him with that too. So it was the right thing, but
Yeah.
a little piece of it wasn't quite right. My under of this dream job that I thought I could do really wasn't. I wasn't going to drive 90 minutes in the car every day to have that wasn't going to be realistic. And so
Yeah.
I like that. Geographic, I know I've been talking with one too, where originally he thought this place, but because of getting married and where they both are going to be. And I think that's so important to understand that, and not just think that's where you want to be, but invest in.
You have to go. You have got to go. You have to go. And I would honestly say multiple times, because, you know, there could be a location that's the honeymoon phase. Again, thinking about weather, I know I hate to like beat it over the head, but you need to like check the seasons out to make sure
Yes.
that it feels good for you. I mean, Phoenix was great for me for graduate school until the summer, and I left. I cannot do 120 degrees. Like, look at that. I'm so pale. I would turn to a lobster. Like, I just could not do it. So, really, you know, knowing, okay, I want to be here, but only 9 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So where am I going the other? And like, how am I setting up those jobs a year in advance?
Hmm.
I mean, that's the thing dancers always think about. When it comes January, we have already planned our summer schedules
Hmm.
because of the way, you know, our job situations are. Even in academia, like we have 9 month appointments. They're
Yeah.
not 12 month appointments, you know, so we still have to hustle for summer work. And that has been the hardest part with the pandemic, is that there's none of that pickup money.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think once people start, you know, going back and everything is safe for us to have performances again and go into studios again, it'll come back. But that's something to think about too. You know, when you think about that location, is it 12 months out of the year you can make money there, or do you need to, you know, put your stuff in storage for 3 months? Go, you know, go to Bates, go to ADF, go to some of these summer programs. A lot of dancers do that.
Yeah.
They'll be somewhere for 9 months, put their stuff in storage, save the rent for 3 months, travel around to different summer intensives, come back, take it out of store. I mean, you know, it's
Yeah.
not easy, but it's doable, and you can still make the life you want to make. It's so individualized though. Because what I think is like the perfect plan for me will be very different even from what my husband thinks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And you know, that's part of it. That's part of developing and learning
Absolutely.
what works. So last question, last tip
Yeah.
would be, what about right now? So I'm a student that just graduated, or maybe I even
Yep.
graduated last year. I
Yep.
had the plan, right? And that plan isn't going to work right now. So what are your tips for those that are looking to get into the field now with what they can do?
Yeah, I think number one, it's not just like to vouch for Dance USA, but national service organizations are your best friend because of the resources. So our website, which is getting redone right now, and it has a huge resource page that's not just like COVID resources. We have that too. We have mental health resources, physical resources. We have a whole task force on dancer health that has a million white papers on there for people to read, but also it connects you to your local dance service organization. So I was the former executive director of Dance Metro DC. So that's the service org for the DC dance area. Almost every single city has a service organization for dance. That's where you'll have access to job boards, to classes, to performance calendars. Get a meeting with the service organization in your town. They literally hold all the keys to everything. They'll know everything about the field. The number one thing I did as ED of Dance Metro DC was have meetings with people that had just moved to the area. Number one thing. Number one thing. Just making sure like this is where you go, this is where you can see performances. Here's the calendar. Here's the job board. Yeah. And I would recommend doing that before you think about moving to that place, because then you really get to see what these towns offer. So service organizations are just a wealth of knowledge and always have a resource page. So making sure that you're going there, checking out their resources, doing the deeper recon, right? So, you know, when you see one page and it links to something else, what do you follow from there and there and there and there? And that's really, for me, that's how I really found my way in the field.
That's great. And we will put Dance USA's website
Awesome.
up there for everyone, so it will be there,
Perfect.
when we edit it and everything. So,
Yeah,
yeah, this has been wonderful.
absolutely.
So much information. So thank you so much,
Yeah,
Becky. I
thanks,
really,
Amy.
yeah,
Great.
really
Had a
appreciate
great
it.
time.